Part 89. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 883. Mother Xia staggered when she heard that Fan Zijin was missing in the vast sea. If it was on land and someone was guarding her, the Duke would always be able to escape, but on the sea, there might not even be a chance of life. The father-in-law doesn't know how to swim, and those guards who follow the father-in-law's water skills are not very good. Let alone protect the master, they may not even be able to protect themselves. Ren Xixia has experienced a lot of wind and rain, and she almost fainted at this time. She finally understood why the prince fainted in anger. Although the prince and the princess are going to save people this time, they are more to give Grandpa collects the corpse, right? If something happened to the Duke, the 3-year-old son would not be able to support the family. At that time, wouldn't the old man be able to enter the house with the uncle of the Fan family? The old man has always been eccentric, even for his own son, the Duke, let alone the little son who has never been very close. When the time comes, he will bring the uncle to live in the Duke's mansion, his wife, a housewife, and 2 children. Shouldn't he be poked round and flattened? At this time, the only ones who can help them are the prince and the princess. As soon as her knees softened, Madame Xia knelt down to Mu Yangling and said in tears, "Madam, I beg you and the prince to save the prince. The son, he is only 3 years old." Mu Yangling pulled him up and said, "Leave the affairs of the Duke to us, you just need to take care of the family." Mu Yangling didn't dare to promise that he would be able to save people. The sea is vast, and it's okay if they get lost or encounter pirates. The former may encounter land or be found by them. Cai, with Fan Zijin's shrewdness, may persuade the other party to save their lives for money, but if there is a storm, or the ship's hull hits a rock, it will be a close call, and I don't know if we can wait until they. Thinking of this, Mu Yangling's face was extremely ugly, so he turned around and left. Chi Heiran had already changed his clothes, endured the disgusting feeling and stuffed a bowl of rice into his stomach. Seeing that Mu Yangling was also wearing a simple short jacket, he couldn't help frowning. He wanted to keep her when he thought about Zijin's life and death now. Unknowingly, he swallowed it back, and it's okay, Aling is a master of martial arts, and seems to have studied naval warfare, so he feels more at ease with her. The 2 of them brought someone into the palace, and Qi Ziyuan had already ordered the sea master from Fuzhou Chaozhou to find someone. When he saw his younger brother and his wife entering the palace neatly dressed, he knew that his guess had come true. He has received news from his side, and sent someone to notify him to enter the palace, and he did not enter the palace until an hour later. With the relationship between Heiran and Zijin, this is completely impossible, and he can only go to save people himself. Qi Ziyuan couldn't stop him, and he knew he couldn't be stopped, so he just said to him, "If you want to leave, go quickly, the sea masters of Daki will be dispatched by you, and you must find him back." Qi Ziyuan said in a difficult way, "Live to see people, die to see corpses." Qi Heiran's eyes turned red, and he stiffened his neck and said, "Why is he about to die and see his body? He is dying, and he must be hiding somewhere waiting for us to rescue him." Qi Ziyuan nodded indiscriminately, but in fact, like Nani Xia, he felt that it would be fine if Fan Zijin disappeared on land. He was accompanied not only by guards, but also by hidden guards, who could always protect him, but on the sea. It's not that Qi Heiran doesn't understand this truth, but he just doesn't dare to think about it, let alone think about it. Qi Ziyuan turned his head and said to Mu Yangling, "You can go with him. If he is crazy, you can knock him out and bring him back. I may have lost a younger brother, and I dare not lose another one." "Brother?" Qi Heiran stared at him dissatisfied. Qi Ziyuan didn't even look at him, but only looked at Mu Yangling. "The sea is vast, you have to watch him." Mu Yangling nodded, "Don't worry, brother, I'm here. You don't have to worry about Beijing. With me and your sister-in-law here, you just go and find someone. Chi Ziyuan got up and picked up the jade seal, covered it on a piece of plain silk, and handed it to Chi Heiran. Bring this, the entire Guangdong officialdom, it's up to you to do it cheaply. This is equivalent to giving Chi Heiran the power of appointment and dismissal as well as the power of life and death. He can move people without going through Chi Ziyuan, and even ransack his family and exterminate his family. Obviously, he doesn't think this matter is as simple as the Guangdong Yamen said. See trial? If Chi Heiran did this, Chi Ziyuan would not doubt it at all, but if it was Fan Zijin, would he be considered an idiot? That boy doesn't want to sit if he can lie down, and he will never stand if he can sit. He heard that there is danger ahead, unless Heiran rushes to the front desperately, otherwise he will definitely stay far away. How far to hide? The sea is stormy, and he will go to test the sea boat like a landlubber. Chi Ziyuan arbitrarily felt that he was either being lured by someone, or the people from the Guangdong Yamen were deceiving him. And he is more inclined to the latter, otherwise, how many interests in this world are there to lure him? Chi Ziyuan didn't waste their time, he just said a few words to them, then got up and sent them out of the palace himself. Little Xiong was brought out of the upper study early, and was waiting outside in a daze. His eyes lit up when he saw his parents pretending to be naked. Father, mother, are you going to take me to ride a horse? Chi Heiran twitched the corners of his mouth, unable to smile at all, so Mu Yangling knelt down and looked at him at the same level, touched his head and said, Little bear, you are the big brother, you have to take good care of your younger brothers and take good care of Aunt Xia, you know. Little bear tilted his head to look at his mother suspiciously. Father and mother have something to do, and it may take a long time to come back. During this time, you are the head of the family. You have to take good care of your younger brothers. Can you do this? Chi Heiran also said, Little bear, you are an older child. Little bear puffed out his chest and said, I'm an older brother, and I will take good care of my younger brothers. Mu Yangling patted his head, carried him to the palace gate, and handed him over to Chi Ziyuan at the gate of the palace. Fei Bai was already waiting at the gate of the palace with his people. Chi Ziyuan waved everyone to get up, and bid farewell to the two of them. Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling got on their horses, nodded slightly at him, and quickly left. Fei Bai hurriedly got on his horse and led the guards to catch up. They rode a group of 10 riders, and there were not many people. The horses they rode were all long-lived horses. They traveled day and night, changing horses every time they reached a post station, and arrived in Guangzhou in only 4 days. Not to mention Mu Yangling, even Chi Heiran has become much emaciated. They only slept for 2 hours a day on the road, and spent the rest of the time on horseback. Chi Heiran is fine. He has experienced more difficult times than this when he was a general. She rode a horse every day when she went out and in. Mu Yangling almost couldn't stand still. She hadn't ridden a horse for a long time. Sure enough, her life has been too comfortable in recent years. Although her riding skills have not declined, her skin has softened a lot, burning pain in the inside of the leg. Chi Heiran gave her a hand, Mu Yangling patted his hand, and looked at the generals of the Guangdong Marine Division and officials at all levels of the government office who hurried out to greet her. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 884. Zhou and Yu Cheng brought people out to meet King Rong. Seeing his pale face and his description of embarrassment, his already uneasy heart trembled twice, but saying anything at this time was superfluous. Fan Zijin had already gone to sea for 11 God, still no news at all. The two concealed the news first, it was impossible for them to live, and now they could only actively cooperate, hoping that the sage and the prince could spare their family members. Although Chi Heiran wished to tear the lives of the two in front of him apart, but he cared about Zijin, suppressed the hostility in his heart, and asked, Did you find him? Admiral Zhou shook his head and said shamelessly, The last general has been sending people to search, but there is no news. Chi Heiran moved his hand, and Mu Yangling held his hand and shook his head slightly at him. It is not wise to do it at this time. They still have to use Guangdong officers and soldiers to attack their chiefs to find someone. Although they will be ordered to search, obeying orders and doing their best are two different things, not to mention that they don't know much about the Guangdong waters, and they still need to rely on them. Chi Heiran suppressed his desire to do something, and helped Mu Yangling into the government office. Only then did Zhou and Yu Cheng see Mu Yangling, who was following Chi Heiran. Mu Yangling has a clear complexion. Although he is wearing men's clothing, he can tell it is a woman at a glance. The two looked at each other, not knowing who this person is. Seeing the two of them entering the mansion with their guards, Yu Cheng hurriedly chased after them, bowed and said, "My lord, I have ordered someone to prepare hot water and meals. Please use us first before discussing matters. The officials and others are in the front yard waiting for you." In front of the foyer is the yamen, and behind it is the residence of the officials. The government offices of the magistrate and the two magistrates are behind the foyer, and the officials and their families are also arranged there. Because Fan Zijian was going to pick up Mrs. Xia, he didn't like the three small courtyards at the back, so he asked steward Xia to buy a house outside, but the small courtyard at the back was not empty, so he cleaned it up and made him a simple living room. You can take a nap in the back during breaks. Yu Cheng asked King Rong to be arranged here, so that after washing up, they could go to the front to discuss the specific matters of finding and rescuing Nquagong. Chi Heiran didn't say a word to him, and sent people to surround Fan's mansion. It was Yu Cheng, the magistrate's order, to conceal it and not report it. It would be considered good if he didn't kill him immediately. Yu Cheng obviously didn't expect King Rong to give him a good face, and almost humbly sent him to the corner gate between the government office and the backyard. Mu Yangling turned his head and said, "Get all the generals above the captain of the Navy Division, as well as military advisors, officials above the 5th rank of the government office, and their masters. We will have a meeting in the government office in 15 minutes. Mu Yangling looked at him sharply, and said, "Those who fail to meet the time limit will be dealt with by military law." Yu Cheng looked at Chi Heiran in astonishment. Chi Heiran dragged Mu Yangling away without looking back. Yu Cheng and Zhou looked at each other, and quickly bowed their heads in response. Looking up again, King Rong and his party had gone far away. A quarter of an hour? Can they take a good bath? Zhou turned around and left, saying, "King Rong Jun is a member of the army, and a quarter of an hour is enough to take a bath and eat." He also doesn't want to talk to Yu Cheng now. This person dragged him into the water, his life was lost, maybe even his family could not be saved, but now he has to cooperate with him. How can he not hate him? When Yu Cheng heard the words, he hurried to inform the officials of the government office to wait in front. The hot water had been prepared long ago, and they could wash up after carrying the water. Mu Yangling went to the bathroom, while Chi Heiran took the other 8 people to strip off their clothes in the open hall, bury their heads in the water and scratch them. Just pour water on it and wash it. While washing, he called the stunned soldier and asked, "Are you a servant in the yamen?" Yes, Xiaobing closed his mouth and bent 70 degrees. "Send someone to Fan Mansion and call Steward Xia from Fan Mansion to this king." "Young one, let's go now." Xiaobing hurriedly ran to the front to find Yu Cheng. Yu Cheng waved his hand and said, "Go and call." Since they didn't stop Fan's house from reporting the letter back then, wouldn't it be courting death to prevent the two parties from meeting at this time? Whatever King Rong wants to do, he will satisfy him. Zhou obviously thought so too. No one dared to run into King Rong's knife at this time. Rong Jun King's prestige in the army is very strong, far surpassing his elder brother. Like his prestige, what the soldiers know is his brotherhood with the emperor and Nquagong. The king of the county and Dukan are only affectionate. Will the 15-day journey be shortened to 4 days with superficial affection? Officials from top to bottom in the Guangdong officialdom are waiting for King Rong's thunderous wrath. A quarter of an hour didn't last long, almost when Zhou and Yu Cheng had gathered people to the government office. Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling came out. The two of them had eaten hot rice, and their faces looked better. As soon as they came up, Qi Heiran asked, "Where's the map of the sea?" Zhou hurriedly took out the picture and drew a few red circles on it. He pointed to those areas and said, "My lord, the officials in these places have been searched, but there is no trace at all. 11 days are enough for Mr. Fan and the others. Flow to Nanyang." Mu Yangling saw a red line drawn within 5 miles of the coast on the map, and asked, "What is this?" Zhou said, "This is the empty coast of the Forbidden Sea 5 miles away. That is to say, fishermen can't go into the sea." Zhou hesitated. Qi Heiran shouted, "Why didn't the princess answer your question? Can fishermen go into the sea?" Zhou trembled in his heart, and said, "Although the sea is forbidden to be able to go into the sea, the fishermen rely on it for a living. After registering at the Yamen, leave from the port. The order will be passed on to lift the sea ban, and fishermen can go to sea. Anyone who can find an Kuagong's ship will be rewarded with 1,000 taels, and those who can find clues will be rewarded with 100 taels." Mu Yangling paused and continued, "Foreigners and Nanyang people also in this list." Seeing that the prince did not object, Zhou quickly agreed. Mu Yangling looked at Qi Heiran, saw that his eyes were out of focus, touched his forehead, and found that it was hot, and his face suddenly became ugly. She said why Qi Heiran, who has always been decisive in killing and killing, gave him the decision-making power. It turned out to be a fever up. Qi Heiran pulled down her hand, turned to Fei Bai and said, "You continue." Seeing him sitting upright on the chair, Mu Yangling couldn't say anything to let him go down to rest, so he turned to Zhou and asked, "How many people are there in your naval division? How many ships are there and how big are they? They are docking now. How many people and boats are there on the shore?" Mu Yangling looked straight at him and said, "I want to hear the real number." The tip of Zhou's tongue was bitter, and he didn't look at King Rong this time. He knew that the princess could make the decision completely. He said, "The Guangzhou Navy has 1,200 people, and there are 560 militiamen. There are more than 6,400 people in the naval division, seagoing ships. There are 12 seagoing ships in total, and 8 of them are capable of going to sea, and all of them have been dispatched now. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 885. Rao Qi Heiran was so dizzy from burning, his eyes couldn't help but widen at this time. There are only so many people in the entire Guangdong Marine Division? Before he came, he asked someone to transfer the dossiers of the Guangdong Marine Division from the Ministry of War. Although he only read a few, he knew it well. He didn't expect them to eat so badly. The actual number of more than 30,000 people was only 6,000. Qi Heiran's face, which was already a little red due to the fever, was even redder now, angry. Zhou also knew that this matter could not be concealed, so he lowered his head. Mu Yang's heart sank, and he asked in a deep voice, "Can those 8 seagoing ships of yours sail long distances?" "No," Zhou said in a broken jar, "the sea boats are all old, they are not heavy enough, and they can't go far. The boat used by Mr. Fan is the best. It was built by the Zhou family with a huge sum of money. At the beginning of this year it was just built, but because of the imperial government's decree, it has not been able to go to sea. We can't sail far, how can we find them?" Zhou gritted his teeth and said, "The officers and men have brought enough dry food and fresh water, and they can go to the Nanyang area." Although it was dangerous, they had already gone back and forth with 2 ships of soldiers, but they still couldn't find anyone. This is what makes them most desperate. But Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling were not satisfied. Without a large ship, it meant that they could not go far, and had to come back for supplies from time to time. If they encountered a bigger storm, they might not even be able to go to sea. At this time, Mu Yangling also wished to kill these people who were paid for nothing. Since the Zhou family can build a new sea-going ship, do they still have any big sea-going ships? Jojo shook his head. He came from a side branch of the Zhou family. The sea merchants in Guangdong haven't gone to sea for many years. The sea ships back then were either left there for a long time and fell into disrepair, or they were sold to the navy as warships. The Zhou family is also close to the sea. It's been a few years since I started thinking about going to sea again. This time the trial ship, the patriarch of the Zhou family and several sons from the direct descendants are all on board. So the Zhou family also suffered a huge loss, and at this time they were still under suspicion of murdering the imperial court official, and the Zhou family was gloomy. Chi Heiran said angrily, "Then tell me, where are their big ships in Guangdong?" "Only foreigners have them," Jojo said. "Recently, 2 foreign ships docked. They are both Western ships. They are heavy and have cannons on them. However, they belong to foreigners." Chi Heiran stood up with a ha and sneered, "As long as there is a boat, let the Guangdong garrison gather and surround the 2 seagoing ships, and let your navy divisions get ready. We will go to sea tomorrow to find someone." "Jojo, Lord, put your words down here. It's okay to find someone, but if you can't find anyone, you will all be buried within Kuagong, and you can think about who should be called to accompany us on board." "My lord, absolutely not," Yu Cheng shouted. "It's a foreigner's boat, and if we rob their boat, it will cause disputes between the 2 countries. "The dispute between the 2 countries? Is it Spain or Portugal? Or France and Italy? Do you know where their land is? To stir up disputes between the 2 countries, they must first get us to come, but they are just 2 sea ships. If you are afraid of even this, you have to piss your pants. No wonder you can give up the 5 miles of the coast." Mu Yangling cursed. "Just do as the prince said, Jojo, you take people there yourself. If foreigners resist, they will be arrested directly. If you dare to kill people, you will kill them all, and we will have 2 more ships." Everyone was startled, and looked at the princess standing on top in shock. The prince is a bandit, so the princess has become the wife of a bandit? This is really embarrassing to Daki, but no one dares to disobey orders at this time. Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran went back to the backyard. "Someone get the doctor here." Mu Yangling took out the pill, thought for a while and doubled the amount. "Take a little more and see if it works." Chi Heiran rolled his eyes. "You're not afraid that I'll eat you to death?" But he still took a handful and stuffed it into his mouth and drank it with water. He touched his forehead and said, "I didn't feel burning, but just fainted. I'm dizzy, I can't even move my mind." His grandma's, when the master frees up his hands, he must have uprooted Qin Fang's people and made me so sick. Seeing that his eyes were almost closed, Mu Yangling pushed him to bed, held his hand and promised, "You go to sleep first, and we will go to sea when the sea boat is ready. It's okay if I arrange these for you, Commander. The army definitely needs you to come, and you have to take good care of yourself." Chi Heiran fell into a drowsy sleep when he heard the words, and he told himself in his heart that Aling was right. He had to get better, and Zijin might be floating in the sea pitifully waiting for him to rescue him, and he must never get sick again. No, absolutely not. As Chi Heiran thought about it, his internal force began to circulate involuntarily, his forehead slowly dripped with sweat. Mu Yangling wiped him with a towel, and Fei Bai quickly walked in. "Princess, housekeeper Xia is here." Mu Yangling put the towel aside and said in a low voice, "Call a boy to come in and take care of the prince." Butler Xia was kneeling under the steps. Mu Yangling asked him to get up, called him into the room, and asked, "Tell me, what's going on?" Telford didn't explain clearly. "We still don't understand you. Why do you want to test the sea ship?" Steward Xia burst into tears. knelt down and kowtowed again, "Madam, our master was deceived by Yu Cheng and the others." Steward Xia cried, "Our lord is interested in maritime trade," so he asked the chief steward to contact the maritime merchants in Guangdong, and wanted to intervene, but those foreigners blindly raised their prices because of the exotic goods, not to mention the maritime merchants in Guangdong. "It is us, the profit I can get from it is not much. My grandfather negotiated with them, but those foreigners raised prices one after another. Our grandfather couldn't help being annoyed. When has he been manipulated like this in the business field? So we united with Guangdong's maritime merchants to boycott. No one bought goods from foreigners. But this matter can't just be deadlocked like this. It has to be resolved. Our master wants to reopen the coast, attract more foreigners, and let the people along the coast have another livelihood. But Yu Cheng said that the pirates are rampant, and the Marines can't resist it. Pirates, reopening the coast will only make the pirates harass the people, and those foreigners are also clamoring not to come to the Guangdong port to stop. The maritime merchants who were originally with our master are a little hesitant, and some people start to contact those foreigners in private." Xia steward wiped his tears and said, "At this moment, the Zhou family came to the door and said that they had secretly built a large ship a few years ago. Because the imperial court banned the sea, they had not been able to test the ship. Dedicated to do sea business with the duke of the country. Our master was worried that there would be no chance to win people's hearts. He agreed without thinking about it. The foreigner gave in, so the Duke of the State wanted to test the boat himself, but he said it well at the time, he could go back and forth on the same day, or the next morning if he was not good enough, but there was no news after the trip. Yu Cheng and the others had passed. It took 3 days to start looking for someone. The slave thought it was a big deal, and it was fine if he disappeared on land. I have guards and secret guards by my side, and I can ride horses and kung fu, but at sea. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 886. Steward Xia's face was full of tears. "My lord, he doesn't know how to drink water." The slave asked people to hurry up and report to the lord, but when he went out, Yu Cheng and his men stopped him and sent troops to surround our house, saying they want to protect us, but they don't allow us to pass on information. Mu Yangling was furious, slapped his palm, and the table next to him was instantly dismembered. Jojo is a side branch of the Zhou family, so what's the relationship between him and Yu Cheng? Housekeeper Xia knew that Mu Yangling was asking why they were colluding, so he hurriedly said, "Back to the princess." As soon as something happened to the prince, General Zhou sent people to search for it at sea. Those who surrounded us were the officers and soldiers of the government office, and there were no naval divisions. In other words, Jojo and Yu Cheng are not of the same mind. Mu Yangling's mood finally improved. She said, "I know about this matter, you can step back for now." Yes, Steward Xia bowed and stepped back. At this time, the port was in chaos. Jojo's naval division did not come back, but there were also a large number of troops stationed in Guangdong. Jojo moved quickly, and he only pulled 5,000 people out and surrounded the port in an instant. The place where a few foreigners lived was also surrounded. Before their swords were pulled out, they were aligned by rows of archers, and they didn't dare to move rashly. The foreigners blushed and said, "Protest, I want to protest solemnly, I want to see your master Yu." Jojo came in from the outside and said with a sneer, "Master Yu? You won't be able to see Master Yu now, but you can only see this general. I'm here to inform you that your ship has been requisitioned by us. Anyone who knows you will let you go quickly. The crew should disembark, otherwise it will be bad if my men attack and damage the cargo. You are breaking the law. This is our property. Why do you expropriate it? I want to see your master Yu." A foreigner directly drew his sword and said, "You are destroying the diplomatic relations between the two countries. Are you going to make our country an enemy?" "Diplomatic relations," Jojo replied to them with the words of the princess, and asked, Has Ardaki established diplomatic relations with your country? Besides, this port belongs to Ardaki. You dock here for supplies and business. But they don't pay any business taxes. Commander Joe, Fabai interrupted him, walked in quickly, leaned into his ear and whispered, Your Highness said, even though we are robbing their boat, we still have to take advantage of it. Jojo was dumbfounded, and asked in a low voice, Well, how does this make sense? Pirates are rampant along the coast of Guangdong. We have been looted within 5 miles of our retreat, not to mention merchant ships. These foreigners will be clean if they can come and go freely at sea? Didn't you report that there are pirates from Japan and Westerners? That is to say, they colluded with the pirates to frame our Duke Angwo of Daki. Do you know who Duke Angwo is? He is the life and death brother of the Holy Lord and the Prince. Now the Duke is alive and dead. The suspicion on them cannot be washed away. We are willing to use it now. Their boat was to save their lives. Fabai was well known by Chi Heiran, and he was very shameless, and said, If something happens to the Duke, not only you, but also these foreigners will have to be buried with him. In short, you should know the reason. Let them give up the ship willingly. Jojo looked at Fabai and thought to himself, Are all the dignitaries above so shameless? Jojo turned his head to look at the foreigner who was watching them, swallowed hard, and Fabai whispered in his ear, General Joe thinks what the prince said is wrong. Fabai said with a cold tone, If you want to say this, I don't even believe that people have nothing to do with pirates, but when did you see them being robbed? Jojo said, But they have cannons on board, it's normal for those pirates not to dare. But the goods on their ships are worth tens of thousands of gold, and my Daki is backed by the mainland, and I have countless soldiers and good generals. They came to rob us, and dare not rob the Westerners who don't know where their homeland is, Fabai said in an old way. Listen to the prince, that's right, you only need to ask for it straightforwardly, and you don't need to act like a bandit. Back then when they were in the Northland, they used to rob big households in the kingdom of Jin from time to time. The robbers were well aware of their mentality. If anyone in the army knew the robbers best, it was the prince. Aren't pirates just robbers? The same reason. Jojo twitched the corners of his mouth, thinking that the princess ordered him to do this. He looked back at a few foreigners, coughed lightly, raised his head and chest, looked at them deeply, and went forward. At this time, Chi Heiran was half leaning on the bed drinking water. He just broke out in sweat, and suddenly felt light and strong, and his brain power returned to normal. Then he recalled Mu Yangling's order and hurriedly called Fabai when he came in to make up for the blind sheep. He was not worried about a few foreigners, but thought that Zijin would have to do business with foreigners after he came back. It would not be good for him to offend everyone all at once. Moreover, he would be impeached if he robbed a foreigner's ship and spread it to Beijing, so he had to find an upright reason. Chi Heiran almost didn't think much about letting the foreigner and the pirates collude. At this time, he was preaching to Mu Yangling, if you want to rob people, you have to do it with confidence. Why do you ask Jojo to talk nonsense with them? Go straight in and kill them all. Just charge him with collusion with bandits. If it's not possible, there will be someone to defend a few foreigners. Now I have to wipe your ass. Is it wrong for me not to kill people? Mu Yangling rolled his eyes, handed him a meatloaf, and said, Since you're better, get up and deal with things. Chi Heiran nodded, took the meatloaf and finished it in 3 or 2 bites. He had just recovered from a serious illness and was very hungry. After filling his stomach and washing off the sweat from his body, Chi Heiran strode forward. Mu Yangling was slightly relieved seeing his resolute back. Chi Heiran's recovery is undoubtedly the best for them. But Yu Cheng and the others felt that a disaster was coming. They thought that the concubine was powerful enough, and they reprimanded them and told them to grab the boat. But when they looked at the prince again, they understood why they could become husband and wife. Mu Yangling just robbed the ship anyway, Chi Heiran even robbed the other party's crew, and asked foreigners to guide them. The euphemistic name is, take the blame and make meritorious service. Guangdong maritime merchants have not been out at sea for a long time, and their understanding of the sea area is limited to 20 years ago, and they are all sailors who stayed before. Not to mention their experience, Chi Heiran does not trust the memory of these 20 years alone. Foreigners' ships often travel between the Western Ocean and the Guangdong waters, and they will go to Fuzhou after docking in the Guangdong waters. It can be said that their understanding of the sea area is no less than that of the Guangdong Navy. The Navy only fights against pirates near the coast, not even involved in Southeast Asia. Chi Heiran really can't count on them if he wants to find Fan Zijian, so he wants to recruit even foreigners. Their lives are in his hands, and he is not afraid that they will be disobedient. Businessmen are after profits, such people cherish their lives. Chi Heiran is not afraid of their tricks. But Jojo failed to learn Chi Heiran's shamelessness, and he couldn't even talk to foreigners about boats, let alone people. Chi Heiran was so angry that he directly ordered the foreigner to be tied up. Yu Cheng wanted to dissuade him, but Chi Heiran suppressed him with just one look. Chi Heiran asked softly, I remember that Yu's his who is from southern Fujian? But my family is small, received Guangzhou. Yu Cheng was stunned, took a step back, bent slightly, and said, yes. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 887. The lives of the whole family are in the hands of Chi Heiran. Even if Yu Cheng is anxious, he can't help it. When he sees the foreigner being tied up in a state of embarrassment, he is already broken. Are you afraid that the matter of accepting bribes will be leaked? Yu Cheng's mentality at this time is a bit broken. Chi Heiran's attention was all on the foreigners. This is the first time Chi Heiran saw a foreigner. He grew up in the capital, and then went to the Northland. Not to mention the Northland, foreigners will not go to the place where the birds don't shit. There will be no foreigners in the capital. So he looked very surprised, but at this time his face was straight and his eyes were so big that others didn't notice that his eyes were slightly rounded. The foreigner who was pulled in saw Chi Heiran at first sight, and found that he didn't know him, and then saw Yu Cheng, and opened his mouth to shout, but saw the man snorted coldly. Not only Yu Cheng, but also everyone else in the room. Everyone lowered their heads, and the foreigners knew that this person had the highest status. The translator said to the foreigners, this is our Prince of Daki. Several foreigners often travel to and from China, and they also know that the previous dynasty has been overthrown. The current emperor is the new emperor, and the prince is the emperor's younger brother, the biggest official besides the emperor, and their expressions all changed. If it was just General Zhou targeting them before, with Yu Cheng around, they could still play games, but what if it was the emperor's younger brother? Several people's hearts inevitably sank. Mu Yangling didn't know what was discussed earlier, but at this time she was meeting Jojo's quartermaster and asked him to prepare enough food, water, bows, arrows, trebuchets and other things to move onto the boat. I don't know if I will encounter pirates, but I will always be safe if I am prepared. The quartermaster smiled wryly, and said in a low voice, Mother, the numbers you mentioned are too large, and I won't be able to prepare them for a while. Mu Yangling's face darkened, and he said, there are 3 trebuchets on each boat, and more than 1,000 arrows. Don't tell me, your camp of more than 6,000 people can't produce 6 trebuchets and 2,000 arrows. The quartermaster knelt down and said, go back to your mother, I really can't get it out. Mu Yangling couldn't help but slap the table. Then what are you spending your military expenses on? More than 6,000 people are living on the empty pay of 24,000 people, but they can't even produce 2,000 arrows. The quartermaster couldn't help bursting into tears. Your Majesty, you've seen the naval division's barracks before. You know, it's not that I'm being negligent, and I really can't afford it. As for the empty salary, the quartermaster gritted his teeth, and couldn't help saying, General Zhou took office 2 years ago, and since he took office, the number of soldiers reported to the Ministry of War has never increased. So Jojo was wronged? Mu Yangling sneered and said, Mr. N can't find it? Does it make any difference who pays the empty salary? The quartermaster's expression changed, and he lowered his head silently. Mu Yangling rubbed his brows and said, go to the garrison to ask for it. I don't care whether you negotiate or borrow it. In short, prepare the things for me. How many of your naval divisions have you transferred back? 5,000 people have been transferred back, and another 1,000 people will not come back until evening. Choose 4,000 people, take a good rest tonight, and divide into 2 battalions to board the ship tomorrow, leaving 2,000 people for defense. I don't need this princess to teach you how much food and fresh water you need to prepare. Yes, Xiaoguan will definitely make arrangements before tomorrow morning. Food and water are not a problem. In order to find people, the food in the army was prepared in advance, but the government did not dare to neglect, and even the maritime merchants and gentry were helpful. Mu Yangling had just adjusted things here, and Qi Heiran also borrowed the boat and people in front, and 2 foreigners will take their experienced boatmen with them tomorrow. As a naval officer, Jojo naturally wanted to follow. Seeing that the concubine followed, he hesitated to speak, but seeing that the prince's expression was the same, he could only suppress his words. It is dangerous to go to sea, but if the prince has no objection, isn't he looking for a way to go forward? It was Qi Heiran's first time to take a sea boat, which was very different from the boat on his own lake. When the wind and waves came, the boat would shake, and after only 5 miles, Qi Heiran's face turned pale, and he felt dizzy and nauseous. Mu Yangling was also a little dizzy at first, but she got used to it after the boat swayed a bit. She took out the seasickness medicine prepared by the doctor and fed Qi Heiran one, and said in a low voice, feel it carefully, let your body follow ship shaking, it will be fine soon. Qi Heiran nodded, and beckoned to Jojo, just follow the route we set before to find it. Fan Zijian and the others didn't wander around casually when they went out to sea to test the ship. They had agreed on the route before they set off. There was a beautiful island in the southeast. They planned to go there for a while and then come back. At that time, if everyone wants to go to the island to play, it will take a day and a half. The sailor at the helm of the ship is a soldier of the navy, and there is also an old boatman from the Zhou family more than 20 years ago. After searching for many times but still not finding anyone, Qi Heiran asked them to cross the island and search for a further place. When they couldn't find them, they separated when they returned. One boat searched south, and the other boat looked east. The helm was left to Jojo and 2 foreigners. All Qi Heiran had to do was to get used to seasickness and look at the sea worriedly. Only when he saw the sea did he know how wide the water area is. Although there are islands scattered in the sea, who knows if Zijian can touch the islands? Qi Heiran was worried, but Fan Zijian wanted to commit suicide by bumping head first. With disheveled hair and an unshaven beard, he poked the ink with his hand. So many people have been sent out, and even a single letter can't be delivered? What do you do for food? Yan Mo blamed himself, Master, it's all a small fault. There was a bang sound outside, and Yan Mo threw Fan Zijian to the ground to block the falling mud and rocks for him. Fan Zijian pushed the person away, patted the mud on his head, looked outside in a haze, and said, the letter can't be delivered, even if Heiran has great skills, he can't find us, so we'll just wait here to die. Lord Fan, don't be discouraged. Joda rushed over, hugged Fan Zijian's leg and said, we still have people, and those pirates won't be able to get in for a while, let's try again, this time send more people sending letters abroad, there will always be fish that slip through the net. Fan Zijian snorted coldly, already discouraged, they had been trapped here for 6 days, and their food was at their limit, so they couldn't last much longer. But Joda couldn't let Fan Zijian give up on this. If Fan Zijian died here, he and his 2 sons would die as well, but the clansmen in Guangdong would definitely be implicated as well. Although Fan Zhaijin was exiled to Guangdong, he had no doubts that he was favored by Chengdu. For more than 20 years, the sea was banned by the previous dynasty. Yu Cheng only dared to accept gifts from foreigners and dared not open the sea. As soon as the Lord came, he showed his intention to reopen the coast, and he wanted to lift the sea ban. He dared to intervene in maritime affairs without telling the Holy Majesty. Naturally, what he relied on could not be the authority of the prefect and the power of the duke, but the grace of the Holy Majesty. Purpose. So Fan Zhaijin must not die here, even if they are all dead. Fan Zhaijin has to live. Yan Mo knelt down and hugged Fan Zhaijin and cried, "Master, don't be discouraged. Think about the son, the young master who has not yet been born, and the prince. The prince knows what happened to you, but he doesn't know what to expect. Well, maybe the prince is looking for us at sea right now." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 888. Fan Zhaijin gritted his teeth. He didn't want to agree to Yanmo, but at the same time he didn't want to die. Thinking of his wonderful life in Daki and the people he cared about, how could he be willing to die? And now he feels that every breath of life is torture. He is not Chi Heiran, he has never experienced the suffering of starvation and sickness in soldiers, wars, and even when they are most difficult, he just stays up and busy all day long, exhausting his body, but at that time, he is only mentally tired. Who dares to starve him, thirsty for him? Fan Zhaijin never felt that physical torture was more painful than mental torture, but now, he felt that he was willing to endure 100 times more mental torture than a little physical torture. In the past 2 days, Fan Zhaijin ate a total of 3 finger-wide dry biscuits, and his stomach was throbbing. He felt that it was difficult for him to even lift his fingers. The delicious food served was the scene where he and Heiran went to seek refuge with his big cousin lost in the forest many years ago, and collapsed to the ground without eating for a day and a night. At that time, Aling seemed to descend from the sky, and gave them a piece of sesame seed cake, and also threw them a pheasant and a hare. With a strong fragrance. Fan Zhaijin swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and looked around at the bare rocks. There were forests below them, but when they stood up, they were either shot by arrows or bombarded. Not to mention that there were no pheasants and hares in the fighting place, even if they were there, they couldn't catch them. Everyone looked at Fan Zhaijin eagerly, hoping that he could say something. Fan Zhaijin looked into a pair of eyes, gritted his teeth and said, "When it gets dark at night, send a few more people out to report." The report has always been a team of 2, because the guards and comforters around him want to protect him. It has always been a combination of boatmen and marine soldiers. This time, Fan Zhaijin's head guard gritted his teeth and gathered 10 guards around him, saying, "This is the last time to deliver the letter. If it still fails, none of us will have the strength to break through, so this time our people will deliver the letter, and 3 people will come out." The 3 stood up, and the chief guard said in a low voice, "We are all selected by the prince to give to the duke of the country. Naturally everyone is happy. If we can't get out, we don't have to worry about burying our bones here. The prince will take good care of our family. Don't worry, my lord, I will do my best." The chief guard licked his dry lips, nodded, and handed out the distress letter written by Fan Zhaijin to them. The distress letter was written by Jota and others to Fan Zhaijin with torn clothes. They didn't use pen and ink, but blood, and the word help was written on it. 3 guards and 3 boatmen came to kowtow to Fan Zhaijin. Fan Zhaijin, who was slumped on the ground, straightened up slightly, barely helped them up, and said with a wry smile, "Go and prepare, take out all the food and share it with the soldiers. This is the last breakout tonight, and then we will stand here and wait for you." The eyes of the 6 people turned red, and they kowtowed heavily to him. All the food was just a few pieces of dry food, of course not enough for the remaining 400 people to share, so it was only given to 6 people. Fanzijan simply closed his eyes in order not to lose his composure. Hayaran used to say that they had no dry food or water during the war, and they drank horse urine when they picked it up, but now they don't even have horse urine. After it was completely dark, more than 400 people threw stones down in groups. The high ground they occupied seemed to be a quarry, lacking everything except stones, which was why they were able to hold on. Of course, I would also like to thank the chief guard. If not for his proper command, it would be impossible for them to stick to the present. Chi Hayaran also gave Fanzijan the head of the bodyguard. At the beginning, he fell in love with the head of the bodyguard's ability to send troops to defend, thinking that if he followed Fanzijan, he should be able to guarantee his safety. Fanzijan's eyes were wet when he thought of this. The chief guard can protect him, but he can't find food for him. Hayaran should have given him a guard who is good at finding food, especially if he has been a disaster victim. It is said that this kind of person is especially good at finding food. Yes, the dirt can make them eat. The 3 groups of people did not break through separately as before, but got together and moved forward slowly on the ground. When they reached the other party's warning point, 2 guards jumped up and killed the enemy lying outside. To be chosen to be beside Fanzijan, martial arts naturally had nothing to say, and a hole was torn open in one fell swoop. Another guard picked up his own boatman and yelled at the other 2 boatmen, "Let's go." As soon as the words fell, Shi Qinggong had jumped 10 steps away. The pirates hurriedly drew their bows and arrows, and the other 2 guards hurriedly stopped them to buy him more time. The 3rd guard went directly to the pirates' boat on the shore, because the pirates' power was restrained on it, and there were not many people left on the shore, mainly looking at the big boat, while the small boat was tied to the shore, and the people patrolling back and forth watched. When it came to the 3rd guard and the boatman, they were killed before they could warn the police. The 3rd guard climbed onto the boat and looked back at the way they came with bloodshot eyes. His 2 companions disappeared for a long time, and even the 2 boatmen disappeared. He said in a hoarse voice, "Let's go quickly." The boatman grasped the direction, and the boat quickly rowed towards the sea. Chi Hayaran clenched his fists to look at the chart, and stared at the foreigners. "You said you can't go." The foreigner said, "That's a pirate's den. If you go there, you'll die. You can't go there." Chi Hayaran turned to look at Jojo, and asked, "You said the old boatman calculated that they might be lost in this direction." "Yes," Jojo said, "the old boatman who came with me went to sea 20 years ago. He said that it is very easy to get lost in this area, either to the north or to the south. Isn't this biased too much?" Jojo couldn't explain it to Chi Hayaran, but said, "This is their experience, Lord. We have been out for 2 days, and we are about to reach the border of Nanyang." Chi Hayaran slammed his fist on the table and said, "Just go in this direction." "This won't work," the foreigner shouted, shaking his hands. "You can't do this. You are going to die. Do you know who the pirates are? They are Portuguese." Chi Hayaran rolled his eyes and said, "He is useless even if he is a man with apple teeth, so he will go to this place. Jojo, order to go down. The 2 ships are ready for battle, and the bows and arrows and trebuchets are ready for the Lord. Isn't there a boat on board, a cannon? Let the foreigners who can fire cannons be ready for the Lord. It's okay if Nkuagong is not on it. We will leave when we lose our sail." The foreigner laughed, "You are too arrogant. The Portuguese cannons and strong ships are not something you can defeat." "Shut up." They were not scared by Jinguo and Zixia, so could they be afraid of a country they have never even heard of? The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 889. It's been the 14th day since Chi Hayaran headed towards the pirates' island, and he had to break into the dragon's pool and tiger's den in front of him. Seeing him sitting dryly in front of the chart, Mu Yangling put a piece of clothing on him, and said in a low voice, "Go and squint for a while, the sky is almost dawn." "Aling, I feel that I am not far from my son, he must be alive," Chi Heiran said suddenly. Mu Yangling was taken aback, blinked, and asked, "Intuition?" Chi Heiran nodded, and rubbed his chest. "Since last night, my grandfather has been feeling flustered, I think it must be because I am not far away." "Then you have to squint for a while." Chi Heiran nodded, "Let the officers and men guarding the two ships keep their eyes open, and don't miss Zijin's ship." Mu Yangling responded, pushed him to sleep, and went to find the herald in person, but found that the herald who should have been guarding the door was not there. Mu Yangling frowned, and went forward, only to see the herald sitting on the deck of the boat, with his head on one side, dead asleep. Chi Heiran only slept for 2 hours a day, and the herald had to deliver orders all the time, so he slept even less. Mu Yangling paused, beckoned to the patrolling soldiers, and asked someone to cover the herald with a coat to go to the patrolling school in person. "Way." The lieutenant went as ordered, and signaled to the other ship. Mu Yangling stood on the deck and looked at the faint island in the distance. At this time, the morning glow appeared in the sky, and the sunrise on the sea was very early. The morning glow is very beautiful, but Mu Yangling can only sigh, and has no intention of admiring it. Not only Chi Heiran is worried about Fan Zijin, but she is also worried. The three of them grew up together, and she knows Fan Zijin best, but he is an out-and-out noble son. "I can't bear the hardship at all, and I don't know what's going on now." Mu Yangling sighed and was about to turn around to go back when he caught a glimpse of a dark spot in the sea out of the corner of his eye and couldn't help squinting his eyes. Her eyesight has always been better than ordinary people, and it is not worse than Chi Heiran's. Seeing that point at this time, her intuition was wrong. She squinted her eyes and looked for a while, beckoned someone, pointed to it and asked, "Where is that? Not human." The soldier squinted his eyes for a long time, and said, "Go back to Wang Fei, the little one didn't see anything. Tell people to drive in with all their strength and go over to have a look." Mu Yangling couldn't help but patted the boat, shouting in his heart that it was a mistake, they should bring clairvoyance when they come to Guangdong. Mu Yangling's heart moved, and he said, "Immediately go to those foreigners and ask them if they have clairvoyance. Also, go and wake up the prince." Chi Heiran believed in her intuition, and Mu Yangling also believed that her intuition was human. Hearing the order, the soldier ran quickly, and first asked someone to call the prince, and then went to ask the foreigner himself, and when he came out with the clairvoyance in his hand, he met the prince head-on. Chi Heiran snatched what was in his hand, and hurried to the deck to look for Mu Yangling. Chi Heiran handed the clairvoyance to Mu Yangling, and asked anxiously, "How is it human? They have been floating on the sea for the past 2 days, but they couldn't even see a ghost." Mu Yangling quickly adjusted the focus, and when he saw the two people appearing in the clairvoyance, Mu Yangling was overjoyed. "It's human." Mu Yangling took a closer look and said, "It's the guard next to Zijin." When he saw the two chasing ships behind him, his expression sank. "Someone is chasing them, let's catch up." Chi Heiran took the clairvoyance while giving the order, and under Mu Yangling's guidance, he soon saw the bodyguard San and the boatmen who were working hard to row the boat, and then looked at the foreigners chasing after him. His eyes flashed gloomy. Zijin really fell into trouble. In the hands of foreigners, it is simply too unreasonable. Aling, they have firecrackers in their hands, which are different from what we use. Go and get the bow and arrow. Mu Yangling hurried back to get her big bow and arrows. Only she could draw her bow to its full capacity, and Chi Heiran could only draw more than half of it, and the range was not low. But at this moment, a figure had just appeared in their eyes, which was obviously enough to make her shoot each other. When people were found, the two boats became agitated, and Jojo and other generals surrounded Chi Heiran, obeying the orders. They were a little stunned to see the princess coming out with a big bow. They estimated the tension of the bowstring, and then looked at Chi and always had a look of admiration in his eyes. Chi was looking at the front solemnly. The 3 boats had also spotted their big boat, and the third guard was rowing towards them with all his strength. The 2 boats only paused for a while, and then pursued with all their strength. Chi couldn't help being startled when he heard the bang, and raised his clairvoyance to look at it. His face darkened. "Tell them to hurry up." The gunpowder hit the side of the boat, and the boatman was so frightened that he lay down on the boat. The third guard knew it was not good. The big boat was still far away from them. There were 4 people on the other side's boat, and there were only 2 of them. How could they compare? Pass. The guard's 3 thoughts were just a flash. His dantian sank, and he swung his palm towards the water behind him. His internal force was on the water, and the boat flew out like an arrow from the string, and it hit the 2 boats behind, pulled away. The third guard pulled the boatman and said, "It's out of range, hurry up." The boatman rowed the boat in a hurry and shouted, "Could it be a pirate too?" The guard paused 3 times, gritted his teeth and said, "It's definitely not," but he also felt uneasy in his heart. As soon as the words fell, there was a shout from the big ship, "Listen, people in front, this is the warship of Duke Rong of Daki. You are in the sea area of Daki, and you must abide by the laws of Daki." The third guard and the boatman were overjoyed. "It's the prince, hurry up." The foreigners behind were also taken aback, and shouted, "Kill those 2 people quickly, they know our landing point." They raised their muskets again. On the big boat, Mu Yangling also raised his bow and put an arrow on the string. Chi pointed out her coordinates in a low voice with clairvoyance. Mu Yangling squinted his eyes to see a few small figures, and heard Chi whisper, "Put." The arrow on the bow came out of the string, and there was an exclamation from the pirate ship. The corner of Mu Yangling's mouth curled up, and he looked at Chi Chi also had a smile on his lips, but it was rather cold, and said coldly, "Come again." Jojo and other generals stared wide-eyed. No one thought that the one who pulled the bow would be the princess. It was a bow of 10 stones. It must have been dark, they hadn't woken up. The other party obviously knew something was wrong and turned the bow of the boat to leave, but their big boat was not slow, and as soon as they turned the bow of the boat, Mu Yangling could see people clearly without Chi using clairvoyance to report the coordinates. She still draws the bow fully, and with 1 arrow, 2 people are strung together. Not to mention the pirates who were hunted down, even the soldiers watching the battle felt a chill down their spines, and they all understood why the prince brought the princess on board. The murder weapon must be brought on board, otherwise it will be our own people who stay in the city of Guangzhou to deal with it. And the few foreigners who came to watch the battle stared round their eyes, and their legs couldn't help but soften. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 890. 6 of the 8 pirates were killed, and 2 were badly wounded and thrown on deck by the soldiers. Chi asked the guard 3 times, knowing that Fanzijin was besieged by pirates on the island at this time. He was not in a hurry for an instant. He found someone, and the battlefield was on land again, so what else could he worry about? Chi instantly returned to combat status, and carried Jojo and several generals into the cabin to discuss a rescue strategy. Mu Yangling stood on the deck and looked at the muskets of several pirates, and his hand holding the bow couldn't help but tighten. This is another difference from her previous life. She is a military student, so she naturally knows that not only gunpowder was invented in China, but muskets were also invented in China. The earliest muskets were just a bamboo tube filled with gunpowder and tied to the gun to fire. It was very popular at the beginning of the invention, but the bamboo tube was not durable, and it took time to fill the gunpowder. It was not as fast as a sword, and it was gradually abandoned. The musket was invented in the southern Song dynasty. At that time, the market economy developed very well, and the Silk Road, whether it was land or sea, was extremely prosperous. Therefore, muskets were quickly spread to Europe. Compared with China, Europe prefers muskets, so they quickly to catch up with the East. Not only muskets, but even cannons are first class. In this life, history turned a corner with Emperor Sejong, so the maritime trade stopped abruptly after experiencing extreme prosperity, and the pace of East-West exchanges also stopped. I did not expect their artillery and guns to still develop so fast. According to calculated by the time axis, it happened to be the period when the firearms of the southern Song dynasty were spread. Mu Yangling knew that Emperor Sejong had used muskets before. Although it was not very successful, he could only fire 3 times at a time, but it was still very good. Unfortunately, muskets still fell silent after being popular in China for a while. At this time, seeing the musket, Mu Yangling was worried about the weapons reserves of the pirates on the island. If it was just muskets, they would divide their forces to fight. With Heiran's talent, they would definitely succeed, but if there were cannons, Mu Yangling became worried. At this time, the third guard was also talking to the prince. They have cannons, but the power of the cannons is not very good, so the sound is loud, can blast some rocks and soil, and the accuracy is not enough. The subordinates think that they should not have many cannonballs. Oh, when we first fought, they could bombard us 3 times a day, but in the past 2 days, they only bombarded us once. That doesn't rule out that they still have stock. Chi Heiran knocked on the table, looked at the cannons on the ship outside, and asked, "How about we use those 2 cannons to deal with them?" "My lord, that cannon weighs 1,000 caddies, so it's hard to carry it." "They don't have a car, but if they have a car, unless they are armed in advance, if they suddenly run with a cannon, isn't this looking for a bomb?" Chi Heiran said indifferently, "Don't worry about this, the king has his own way. They have 5,000 people and cannons, but we only have 2,000, so we must use 1 cannon. If it was his elite troops that would kill 5,000 pirates with 2,000, he wouldn't be afraid even with cannons." The cannon was moved up to attract the attention of the pirates, and he led the soldiers from another ship to touch it quietly. Chi Heiran quickly made up his mind. He called Mu Yangling and said, "Aling, you take a boat of people and cannons to land from the southwest bank, and put the cannons here." Chi Heiran had just painted on the island. Pointed a location on the map that came out, and said, "Let the foreigners shoot at the foreigners. I don't want to have much lethality, but the shells must hit them near them to attract their full attention. I take another ship." Someone landed from the south bank. "We made a dumpling for him. Their muskets have a long firing distance, so be careful." Chi Heiran said, "Don't worry, I will rush forward after they finish 1 round, so that they don't have time to change the gunpowder." I asked them, "They can only fire 5 times at a time, so can they consume them?" "The gunpowder is up to you, we will make a quick decision this time," Chi Heiran said distressedly. "The guard said that the food on the mountain has long since run out." Mu Yangling also became worried, got up and said, "Take Jojo with me and let him lead the army." "Well, I'll leave the guards to you. After you bring the artillery to the place, you take them to meet Zijin first." The 8 guards who followed Chi Heiran were all outstanding, and it was more than enough to form an assault team with Mu Yangling. The 8 guards went down silently to bring dry food and water. The prince asked them to go up the mountain ahead of time because he was worried that the prince had nothing to eat. As subordinates, they must know how to be considerate. Mu Yangling and 8 guards pressed 3 foreigners in a small boat and boarded another boat. The 2 boats separated and went on 2 sides. Mu Yangling and the others reached the southwest coast first. The pirates on the island saw that the big boat was wowing early, shouted and gestured for them to stop. The foreigner stood beside Mu Yangling and said in unproficient Chinese, "They are asking who you are." Mu Yangling raised his eyebrows and said, "Tell them, we are merchants passing by and want to go ashore for supplies." A soldier handed him the flag, and the foreigner could only take it silently, using a set of semaphore. The other party quickly responded, and the foreigner said, "They don't welcome us, and they want us to leave immediately. It seems that they are powerless, otherwise the pirate den will reject the merchant ships that dock." The foreigner was silent, thinking, "It's because they are acquaintances on this boat," and the other party became suspicious. "Okay." Unexpectedly, when the foreigner thought about it, Mu Yangling glanced at him sideways, and said with a half-smile, "Or do they know this ship and the cannons on it?" The hearts of the foreigners skipped a beat, and although their expressions didn't change, they became really nervous. Daki's prince arrested them for the crime of colluding with pirates. If Will Dachi misunderstand the arrest of Nkuagong on him? You know, he had a very unpleasant fight with Nkuagong before. The foreigners became a little anxious. When the previous emperor was in power, he had never encountered such a problem in doing business in the big eastern country. The new ruler was really unfriendly. The ship gradually approached the shore, and the pirates on the shore were not only warning them with words, but raised their muskets to threaten the ship, but the ship was not within their range, and they didn't want to make things too stiff, so he didn't do it for a long time. Mu Yangling didn't wait for the boat to stop, but directly ordered, "Shoot arrows." The archers who had been squatting on the side immediately stood up and shot arrows towards the shore in unison. Some pirates saw that the situation was not good, turned around and ran towards the island. Mu Yangling shot all those people to death with a bow. The foreigner standing next to her was already immune to her cruelty. Although his face was still ugly, he no longer trembled. The big ship stopped, and Jojo ordered, "Go ashore." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 891. The soldiers went ashore in 4 columns at once, and some of them carried the cannonballs in the middle, while Mu Yangling waited for the others to walk almost before he lifted the cannon and disembarked. Mu Yangling is small, holding a cannon weighing nearly 2,000 jin, he can't see anyone in an instant, and people on the shore can only see the cannon moving by itself when looking up. The expressions of the 8 guards were a little chapped. Although they had expected it, they still couldn't accept it when they saw it. The princess alone lifted the cannon that required 20 people to lift it? Well, it doesn't feel scary to carry it, the key is what's the matter with you walking like flying? Jojo was worried about whether the cannon could be transported up. After all, there were only 9 people connected to the princess, so after landing, he looked back and staggered, almost falling. The cannon was moving towards him quickly. There were 8 bodyguards guarding the cannon. The only one missing was the princess. Jojo stared at the legs under the cannon in horror, turned his head and said to the adjutant, "Let everyone hurry up, speed. The concubine must not be allowed to go to the front, otherwise the soldiers may be in chaos before they fight." When rushing forward to the peak, the soldiers naturally would not look back, so everyone did not notice the cannons that followed them. But the foreigners are not their soldiers, and he is also worried about his cannon. He is not worried that they will not be able to transport it. It would be better if it cannot be transported. Such a glance refreshed their world again, and the foreigners who had barely calmed down staggered again. Are all Daki people so powerful? Then why were they beaten so badly by the pirates? Or is it only the princess who is a strange person? Mu Yangling put the cannon in the designated position, and pressed the 3 foreigners to let them fire the cannon. At this time, the 3 foreigners could not afford to resist or be passive and sabotage their work. In the face of absolute power, all conspiracies and tricks were just clouds. The shell flew through a small forest and landed among the pirates, and the pirates who were preparing to charge for the last time were blown away. Mu Yangling blinked and gave a thumbs up to the foreigner who adjusted the cannon. "You are really accurate." Although the power of the cannon was limited, if the shells landed in a dense crowd, the casualties would still be heavy. She did not expect that this gunner was so powerful that he could shoot such a beautiful cannon without clairvoyance adjustments. The foreigners were stunned. As God testifies, he really just adjusted it casually. Although his country is not friendly with Portugal now, it still maintains an ally relationship. He really didn't want to blow them up. The soldiers who fired the cannonballs at the back ignored him. Seeing that they could fall into the crowd, he quickly stuffed the cannonballs in his hand and ignited them directly. A series of 3 shells were fired, and the pirates on the opposite side were completely enraged, and they drove the local aborigines forward. But the natives scattered and ran away as early as the first shell fell. They held guns and forced them to charge forward, but they did not dare to charge. The opponent was obviously stronger than them. They stayed to die. To go is to die, it is better to stay and rest. Jojo left some people to guard the cannon, and divided the remaining people into 2 teams to outflank the past. Mu Yangling and 8 guards each had a bow, sneaked into the forest and shot the opponent's gunner. If their pirate leader hadn't stayed among a group of people, Mu Yangling would have shot him too. Seeing that it was almost done, the guard said in a low voice, "Madam, let's go up the mountain quickly, the prince is almost here." Mu Yangling put away his bow, took the knife from the guard, and said, "Let's go." A group of 9 people went up from the side. When the pirate saw them raising their guns and was about to shoot, a guard came up to him in a flash, grabbed his gun as soon as he took it, and chopped him down with a knife, while the other 7 jumped into the pirates to slaughter them. The distance shortened, and the pirates were killed before they had time to shoot. Although Mu Yangling's Qinggong was a bit weak, she was also very fast in front of foreigners. She walked in front, killing all the way up, and quickly broke through the opponent the encirclement circle. There is no way, they chose the edge area, and most of the pirates were attracted to the bottom by the shells, and there were very few pirates who stayed to continue the encirclement. With the addition of these 8 people, it was natural and fast without holding back. The 8 guards guarded Mu Yangling in the middle, and jumped up the mountain lightly, and reached the mountain pass after a few ups and downs. The people on the mountain had been lying on the mountain pass and watching since the shell fell among the pirates. Seeing 9 people dressed as Han Chinese flying up, everyone cheered in a low voice, and Yan Mo even burst out in tears, shouting said, "Princess Wangfei, our master is here." Mu Yangling rushed towards Yan Mo when he heard the voice, "Yan Mo." Mu Yangling rushed up, and saw Fan Zijin lying at Yan Mo's feet with his eyes closed at a glance. His face was startled, he stepped forward and squatted down, and reached out to touch his neck. He breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "What happened to him?" "Hungry, our master fainted from hunger. Empress, have you brought food?" Mu Yangling took off the package on his back, pulled off the water bottle on his waist, and poured a sip of water on Fan Zijin who was in a coma, and opened the package when his lips were moist. She brought a lot of dry food, and considering Fan Zijin's pampering, she also packed all the snacks left on board. Although the taste was not very good after 2 or 3 days, it was better than dry food. "There are 2 big apples." Looking at Fan Zijin who was in a coma, Mu Yangling became embarrassed. "How are you?" Yan Mo Hao took an apple without hesitation, twisted it with a dagger, and stuffed the finely chopped apple into Fan Zijin's mouth. Fan Zijin tasted the sweetness in his mouth and slowly opened his eyes. When he saw Mu Yangling looking at him with concern, his eyes blinked. He turned his head to look at Yan Mo, and said in a low voice, "It's because I'm hungry and dizzy, and it's all relieved." Yan Mo cried, "Master, this is not relief, this is the princess, the prince and the princess are here to save us." Fan Zijin's body froze, and then he reached out and pinched Mu Yangling's face. After confirming that he was a real person, he couldn't help but tugged on Mu Yangling's sleeve and cried, "You guys still know to come and save me, it's been more than 10 days, what have you all been doing?" Joda and the others were secretly worried, and said in their hearts, "How can you blame the prince and concubine for this matter, isn't this chilling them?" Isn't Nkuagong afraid of being divorced from the prince and concubine? Yan Mo wiped away his tears, and turned his head away. He thought that he hadn't seen this matter. Since he saw such a shameful thing, he would have to peel their skins after thinking about it afterwards. Mu Yangling softened his face and patted him on the head comfortingly. Aren't we here to find you? The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 892. Fan Zijin gnawed on the snack with a sullen face, turning a blind eye to Mu Yangling's motherly eyes. He felt that the reason why he was pulling Mu Yangling's sleeve and crying just now was because he was still confused and thought he was still dreaming, otherwise how could he do it? Such a shameful thing happened. Mu Yangling knew what he was thinking, but this didn't prevent her from looking at him happily. The stone that had been hanging in her heart fell. Could losing face be more important than life? Yan Mo moved over carefully, and said, Master, the younger one has asked Mr. Zhou to count the number of people. We can go down the mountain when the prince comes up. Fan Zijin snorted softly, and also had a bad look at Yan Mo. Even though he kicked out all the people around him and didn't let them see more jokes, his gaffe has been seen by everyone, which is unforgivable. He gnawed half a piece of pastry fiercely, and then choked. Mu Yangling patted him on the back and poured water on him. Seeing him staring at the half piece of pastry on the ground, he asked cautiously, I still have a lot here, well, do you want to eat some more? Fan Zijin ate 8 yuan of dim sum in a row, which seemed impossible in the past. His stomach has always been delicate, and he is self-disciplined. No matter how delicious something is, it is impossible to eat so much at once. Fan Zijin rubbed his stomach, shook his head, and muttered, it's not good to eat too much dim sum. Sitting on the side eating dry food, Jota only felt that Nkuagong was really hated. Down the mountain, Chi Heiran also attracted the hatred of all the pirates. As soon as the cannon rang, Chi Heiran brought someone up to touch it. Seeing the chaos in the pirate camp, he immediately understood that the other party's hearts were not on the same page. And the ones running around had black hair and yellow skin like them, but those foreigners had fair skin and yellow hair. Chi Heiran immediately ordered, only kill foreigners. As long as those black hair don't do anything, ignore them, go. Chi Heiran has no choice but to fight at sea. Isn't he confident in fighting on land? Besides General Yuan, who has Daki served before? Chi Heiran rushed forward with his own example. Sailors are weak, they cannot eat enough and have little strength, so they cannot deal with tall and powerful foreigners, but if they can't beat one, can they still beat three? They kept the prince's teaching in mind, and the infantry rushed forward in groups of three against one, and the three groups formed a team to help each other. Before the infantry rushed up, the archers first gave the opponent a battle. Chi Heiran picked and killed the gunman who stood far away. Although he didn't like to use muskets, it was not that he didn't know this kind of firearms. Up. The foreigners didn't have a gun in their hands, most of them held swords, and those with guns were all behind, and they were scattered after a few shots just now. Chi Heiran arranged for 2 teams of archers to shoot arrows here. The range and accuracy of the archers of the Marine Division are not high, and Chi Heiran does not expect them to be able to hit people, but the bows and arrows can also cause a lot of trouble. Chi Heiran flashed between them with his sword and light kung fu, and he moved quickly, killing them one by one with his sword. Before the foreigners had time to aim, the figure flashed in another direction. They had fought against the Han people for so many years, and they had never seen this kind of movement. It's the devil. Jojo also rushed up with his men, surrounded and killed the foreigners, and the 2 sides fought thoroughly. At this time, people mixed with each other, and the cannon completely lost its effect. Seeing that the officers and soldiers let them go to the foreigners, the natives yelled, "Run away!" The natives ran even more happily, and the foreigners couldn't stop them at all. They only have more than 3,000 people, and the natives have about 2,000 people. This time, they ran away for a little half. Including the previous consumption, the two sides were almost evenly matched. Because there are many strong foreigners, they have the upper hand for the time being. But Chi-Heiran managed to disperse the spearmen so that they could not connect end to end, and behind his infantry were archers, shooting arrows at the gathered foreigners. Even if they were not accurate enough, they could kill a lot of them. The battle was at a stalemate. Chi-Heiran was killing the enemy while hating. In the final analysis, the soldiers were too weak, 3 against 1. He brought the leading lieutenants to press the formation but failed to reduce the casualties. But he didn't know the shock of the captains. They had also fought against foreign pirates, because they were powerful and had guns. Every time they suffered terrible casualties. In the past, 10 people killed on their side might not be able to hurt one of them. It is because people died before they rushed to the front, and those who rushed to the front were quickly killed because of lack of cooperation. Now seeing that the soldiers can kill a lot of enemies, I immediately feel that this tactic is good, and I plan to let the soldiers go back. Practice hard. On the mountain, the guards who had been paying attention to the battle at the bottom of the mountain reported to Mu Yangling, "Princess, the mountain is stuck." Mu Yangling picked up the bow and arrow, and said, "Leave 3 people to protect the Duke, and the 5 of you will follow me." The chief guard hurriedly said, "Madam, we 400 people still have some use. Why don't we give them a shot from behind? Do you still have arrows?" The head guard smiled and said, "Yes, my subordinates specially reserved some for the decisive battle, but there are not many." He asked someone to take out the left arrows. Mu Yangling looked at the terrain at the bottom of the mountain, pointed to a place and said, "Take people there and lie down. Although you eat, running will consume your energy, so you stick to it and don't shoot the arrows in your hands. After releasing, attack the room in a fast and slow manner, keeping enough arrows for your own survival." The head guard agrees. Mu Yangling turned to his commandos and said, "Our targets are those with guns." Mu Yangling patted Fan Zijian's shoulder and said in a low voice, "You wait here for us to come back, don't show your head, remember, don't show your head." Fan Zijian rolled his eyes. He was so sleepy now, even if he was forced to stand up with a knife, he wouldn't even move. Mu Yangling smiled, understood what he meant, and led people to lurk down. Mu Yangling's arrow was different from others. Her arrow was a bit longer than others. Several gunmen fell beside Chi-Heiran one after another. He knew it was Mu Yangling just by hearing the sound. He changed into killing the enemy and shouted, "Aling, capture the king." The foreigners could not understand this word even after they had learned Chinese, but they subconsciously believed that the other party was going to make a bigger move, and they all became nervous. The arrows in Mu Yangling's hand kept shooting out. Because the distance was relatively short, one arrow directly pierced one person's neck and another was strung together. The distance between the two was not short. He didn't expect the opponent's arrows to be so powerful. Many people saw this scene. The soldiers' morale was boosted, and the shouts of killing rushed to the sky. The foreigners showed horror in their eyes. How could bows and arrows be more powerful than muskets? Even the musket can't shoot through the two of them, and it's not close range. The pirate chief yelled, "Find that man and kill him." The people who had been surrounding him suddenly dispersed and attacked in the direction where the arrow was shot just now. Mu Yangling put the arrow on the bow almost at the moment when the gap appeared, and the bow was released instantly, shooting directly at the pirate leader. The bearded foreigner stared wide-eyed, and his eyes were full of disbelief when he fell down. The leader died, and the pirates were in chaos, and finally took down the pirates before sunset.